Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday. It's November 1st. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And taking a quick look at our daily chart before we get over to our 2000 tick chart, you can see we had that last little push up that turned down, and this bar closed pretty negative. This looks like a topping action, even if it's only temporary. Um, so we'll see where we go from here, but it does look like a topping action. We're still working kind of sideways here, so we could just kind of work sideways a little bit, but this does look like a topping action, and if we break below this bar, I would expect we're probably going to trend lower at least for another day, at least momentarily. So we'll see what happens, but this does look somewhat topping. But anyway, uh, we'll flip over to today we trended down really strongly early and then mostly just traded sideways after that. So there was a lot of sideways mixed trading today. But we'll flip over to the 2000 tick chart and take a look and go from there. And as you can see, we traded down until about 10:30 or so this morning, and from the rest of the day, it's just real tight trading range. With there's a few trades in there, more than we've had in some afternoon trading ranges, but not a lot going on after about 10:30 today. So it looked like we were going to rally out of there momentarily, but it just didn't happen. So let's zoom in here, go through the trades, and wrap this day up. And 7 o'clock came right on this little move up through here, and really I marked this one green, but really what it looks like, notice you really got kind of a triple bottom. This was for 7 o'clock though, but you got a new low here, and you tried to go lower once, twice, and when it broke higher there, it fails. We don't actually trend low, break lower here, but you can clearly see that's a very negative move. This is a little more advanced trade. It'd be a failure anyway, so it's already an advanced trade. But I really like this trade in real time, but I'm going to mark it green all the same because it's a little more advanced, and you need to be more experienced to trade that. But it was a nice move up, and then we actually got a break right in here, close outside the trend line, and then we made a new high, and then it looked like we were headed lower here. Notice you got a trend working down. We do get a close outside here, and but notice you got a new low, first entry, and that's a second entry uh, short right there. You know you're probably going to make a new low here, and we could continue to go lower. It's possible this could be a two-tiered channel right here. Um, Most likely it's not, but it's possible it is. But almost guaranteed you're going to make a new low right there. And so I like that second entry. I think that one's worth taking there as well. Even though we are slightly above the EMA, that doesn't mean a whole lot right there. So uh, then we trend up. We get a close outside. Looks like we're going to go. There's a second entry here. I didn't like this one as much because there's so much sideways action there. You can clearly see that little trading range right there. And everything's below the EMA there, and it touched it and turned back down. So even though you got a first entry, second entry, and you would expect prices to probably try to make a new high, I don't think that one's worth risking there. Maybe if you had enough room between here and here on the engulfing bar, but I don't think you have enough room there to get out. It's real close at any rate. So, and then we just come up here and we turn and we head lower, and you just don't really get a setup because this technically that continues over, and we just drop out and keep going, and you just don't get a setup here. There were two problematic high level news items this morning: the manufacturing and the JOLTS, the job openings or whatever they call it. Um, the way things have been lately, anything to do with economy and jobs and things like that are any of these that are red, I would pay close attention to them. in the past we hadn't worried too much about them, but with the way the economy is right now and the way inflation is, and some of the way the news items have been really uh, a problem lately with lots of volatility, I'd pay close attention to any of them that are red right now. And you can see we're just moving across here. But I'd skip this right here. I'd be flat 15 minutes before 9 o'clock because of those two items. And we kind of drop down, and then we're working sideways again. Notice here that you made a new swing high right here, and then you try to go higher once, twice more, and it fails. So on a break lower right there, that's a failed second entry long. It's right at the key entry point. We're still closing outside the trend line. You might even enter this one on the engulfing bar, but when this closes this bearish, definitely take that trade. And off it goes again, and we drop on down. We come back to the trend line again right here, but you can't take that. Come back to it yet again. There's a second entry here, but it's right into that low, and I'm not crazy about that. That's one that maybe you take. I think it's a little risky because there's not much room to scalp out. And you can see it would have worked, but it's not. It's quickly we get a break. It bounces and we get a break, and that's the problem. We've just been going low, going down for so long, and that's just so close. If there's enough room to get out, by all means, you take that trade. But when it's that close, I'm a little leery of it. Maybe it's worth risking, but I think you're better off to wait. And a few minutes later, we get a second entry short here, but the problem is this trend line's still in play, so I think that's really risky. But notice we get the close outside. We get a couple legs up to a new high. This bar is like 6 ticks. I mean, even if this is going to turn out to be sideways, you got plenty of room to get out. So I like that one. Again, I marked because it is a little sideways and congested. I marked it green. But that turns out to be a really nice trade. Drops on down to the new low, and it looks like maybe we're going to rally out of there. And we're working up. You get a close outside. And this is also a first entry. We make a new high and you get a first entry, but it's also a 1, 2, 3 triple test. So I like that trade. Just if nothing else, just to ride it back to the EMA, and you actually get 2 legs down, and now you're working down, close outside, new low. I'm not crazy about going back long right there just yet, though. It was a second entry when it broke above this bar. Actually, technically, it's not. It's just a first entry when it breaks above this. So that's another reason just to kind of skip that one. I mean, it looks like 2 legs back almost anyway, but I wouldn't treat that like a second entry, even though it looks a lot like 2 legs back. And you can see we're just kind of chopping around now between the midline and the upper resistance here. And we finally break out, and it kind of rolls over sideways a little bit, and then the bottom drops out of it. But unfortunately, there's no setup to get in there. This is too congested. You don't get any other hiccup or anything in the bottom. It just falls straight out of it, and then we're just going sideways again. There's another second entry right here, and you may take this one too. You can see that there's a new low and you get a first entry, second entry, but it's on a failed breakout, and there's so much chance that that could tick lower than turn up. It is a second entry. We would expect prices to maybe make a new low there. So even if it's going to reverse, so maybe you take that trade. I'll mark it green, and then we're just chopping sideways. And I don't see anything short or long that I would be willing to risk there. It drops on down, and we go into another. It's one of those days where we kind of get a little move and then go sideways. And again, I don't see much I like here. Maybe you consider that a triple test, but look how congested it is. Look how many. Look, we tried that. We couldn't get below the EMA or the midline of that little range several times there. So I think that makes that very risky. So. We finally drop down, but no move. Then we drop up, and it breaks out, and we actually go a perfect measured move. That's too much of a doji inside bar, in my opinion, so I don't even like to try to ride that back. But if you just wait a minute, we come back here and we shoot back into the range, and then suddenly we find resistance there again. We've got the EMA, we've got the range high, and we've got the trend line all working together right there. I think that's worth taking that as a lower high, even though that's really moved a long way for a lower high. But because of the range situation, it's just like another short off the range, basically. And so I like that one. Just looking for a scalp inside the range. And then we bounce and we come back up. We test that same area once. We come back, we test it again. So now we got a triple test. And with that big bearish bar, I like going short there. And it takes it a minute, but the bottom finally drops out. And then it fails out the low side. And you can see we're just kind of chopping sideways after that. This is too congested to try to do anything. I mean, both of those signal bars look pretty good, and you could argue there's a triple test, but there's not much room back to, I mean, really, you're just kind of right outside. We haven't really we did make a measured move on the breakout up here, and we hadn't made one here, so there's a good chance we're going to keep trying to go lower. Eventually, one side's going to win out, but you don't know which one here. And with that trend line still holding, it makes that one very tempting on that second entry. And if you took that, it probably works. It looks like it does work. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I think there's enough room there. So yeah, there's over 2 points. But I just think it's risky because it's on a failed breakout that could trap you. And at first it looks like it is going to trap you, and then it just turns back down again. But eventually it does work higher. So that's the problem with that. It's just hard to know which way you're going out of that because there's a failed break out of the trading range. We've already had a break and low of the trend line, even though it seems to be holding. The rules are telling us this is pretty much over, and you can see it does end up being over. So this is one of those things where it's just hard to know. Even if you're reading it properly, you don't know exactly what's going on. So just skip it. It's not worth risking. And of course, you got a new low here. You run up real strong momentum, pull back, get a first entry, pull back, get a second entry. And so there's a failed second entry short there. But again, I don't think it's worth taking because we're finding resistance right there again. And you could get trapped. It ends up giving you a short trap on a higher low here. So this is a breakout pullback. So maybe you take this trade. I marked it green, of course, because it does break lower, leading you to believe that we're going to go lower, and then suddenly it reverses. And that's probably going to send prices back up to here. So maybe you take that one. Again, it's not a perfect trade, but if you understand what's going on, you realize there's probably going to be a short trap there, which there is, and you can see it run on up. And then we end up going much higher than that, but I don't see any other trades here you could take either because you don't want to go long into this stuff. And we actually get an overshoot, lower high. This one is tempting as well because of this overshoot, but there's still a chance after this close outside we could make another move up. But that's another one you could argue maybe to be green, and that does confirm that trend line. So there's good enough reason to think, hey, we're at least going back to the EMA. But really what this looks like to me is a double top and then 2 legs down. So this looks more like the failed second entry long and long trap. And you can see that it acts more like one too. The bottom just falls out of that one. And then once again, we start working sideways. And that works us into this bigger channel here. First, it looked like it was just going to be on the low side, but it runs up and you end up with a 2-tiered channel here. This one's tempting. I'd wait on a higher low because you don't know when it might make another push down. Because technically you had your break and a new low already, and then you had a second leg down here. So you don't know how far this is going to go, and it's just not worth risking another short right there. And then we end up just kind of chopping around. Here I think you want to wait on a higher low, and you don't get one. You just kind of chop you take off, and then you're just kind of chopping sideways. You end up in a tighter range right here, and you got really a triple test here, and just a chance to go long at the lows of the range with a decent signal bar that's actually a higher low. So I like that one. And believe it or not, this one breaks higher and runs all the way up, and then you end up figuring out that the range is just twice as wide as you think it is. What looks like originally the resistance up here turns out to be your midline. You get a lower high here, no setup though, runs down, and then you find support down here again. I like just riding that back to the EMA, and maybe it'll go to the other side. Ends up just kind of chopping. And this is where you got to be real careful. Right in the middle of this bigger range is a tighter range, and so we're just kind of straddling this midline, and it gets tough to trade that. This one's tempting here, but it's just so close to that, and so there may be room to get out before the EMA, but I don't think it's worth taking, because you see it does end up going lower. So you got to be real careful for it. Careful with it, I should say. And bounces down here, but doesn't really give you a setup, and it runs straight up to the other side. You can't go long in here. You're looking for a short. And this is what people will do. I'll get people, and they'll still be looking for a long here because of this channel. But it's obvious the range is the more important pattern here. It's been going on for hours. And we had this, I saw somebody post this in the forum, and you just can't go long into that high. You'd be looking to get short here, not long. And then suddenly you get the breakout and two legs up and that big bearish bar. Again, it's usually best to wait on a lower high. But in this case, I really like this trade, and I marked it green. So you could still take that one. And you can see there is a lower high here, but you've moved too far, and that's too much sideways. So just wait, and then suddenly you get another chance. It tries to go higher twice here. So technically, notice that triple, you try to go up there, there. I like that for, and you could have, I don't think you want to enter this on the engulfing bar. There is an engulfing bar. I don't think you want to enter there. I think you want to wait for this to close and see if you get that break lower. And if you do, go with it. Because you tried to go higher here twice, and you can clearly see that we're back in the range, and it's holding again. And you're probably going to make a new low on this move anyway, which notice how you do. And we end up just chopping sideways right on. Well, actually, we dropped a little bit here before the close, but we spent most of that time still within the range, and we closed basically right back at the range. So there it is. That's how I saw it today. Again, we spent more than half the day going sideways. Lots of choppiness. Lots of sideways action. You got some moves in there, but they would always lead right back into more choppiness. But again, you can see the big sell-off. And then we just kind of consolidated the rest of the day. Prices couldn't rally, but they couldn't take it any lower. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. We saw the daily chart. It's just kind of hard to say at this point, but it looks like we're topping out, and then we're probably going to at least correct momentarily, even if we don't start selling off again. So we'll see what tomorrow brings, but not much else you can say about today. It was downhill till about 10:30, and mostly sideways after that. It really looked like we might rally out of there and rebound, but wasn't to be today. So we'll see what tomorrow brings. But hope you had a good trading day. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next